Limited. Until then, happy birding.
For more than 60 years, Colorado energy companies have relied on fracking. 90% of all oil and natural gas wells have been or will be fracked. Colorado is nationally recognized for our stringent state laws and regulations for oil and natural gas development. The need for reliable, affordable energy is always balanced with protecting Colorado and the environment. To see all that we're doing, go to cred.org.
The Experience Pros Radio Show, home of the original Fan Braggin' Fridays. Take just 20 seconds to become a business revolutionary by sharing a fan bragging story of great customer service by using the hashtag FanBrag or calling the Fan Braggin' hotline at 855-FAN-BRAG, FANBRAG. Now back to Angel and Eric, the Experience Pros.
Hey, welcome back to the Experience Pros Radio Show, home of positive business talk. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you. Guess what?
What?
Change is coming.
You know, I mean, if we want things to be different, things have to change. And
I don't like change.
Well, and most of us think that we don't, but we really probably like it more than we think.
I fear it.
And the ability to accelerate organizational change is arguably the most important role of the leader, yet, according to our next guest, one of the least understood. Few have mastered the art of getting people to change the way they approach their jobs. There's a book called Change the Way You Change. And inside of it, our methods are proven and practical, and they can be replicated. Whether novices or veterans of change, readers will learn how to change the way they change in order to accelerate change in their teams and companies. Have you gotten what we're talking about?
I think so.
A little bit of change makes a great big difference. The author of Change the Way You Change, Kendall Lyman. Welcome to Experience Pros.
Thanks, guys. Fun to be with you.
Kendall, very nice to have you along with us today as well. We're fighting an uphill battle. People fear change. I'm reminded of the insurance commercial that says the boat, the boat, the boat. It makes me nervous. The same thing happens with change.
Absolutely. Most of us there's a great quote that says, I love making other people change.
Right.
Right. I don't need to change. Everybody around me needs to change. And we've been talking earlier in the program about engaging our employees. And this is one of those misunderstood and overlooked roles of leaders. And I know you guys talk about this a lot in your book, and you've got some great tips, but where do we start if we want to make change in our business? We can't just kind of come in and wave the flag and everything's going to change. People are going to freak out. Is there a way to do it a little more subtly?
I think the problem that we've seen with working with lots of leaders over the years is that leaders too often have done what you've said. They've either waved the flag, they've mandated change, they have tried to do it top down, or many of the books that we read say, start with the individual, basically teach a man to fish and you can fish for a lifetime. But what we've discovered over doing this for a lot of years is that it's not really an either or. The issue is that an organization does have to change. The environment changes, the strategy changes, our customers change. So it has to be there. At the same time, we've got to translate that down to what it means for you and me. And we have to recognize that each of us individually have an emotional cycle that we go through change. And if a leader isn't willing to engage at the individual or team level, the mandated change from the top, the outside-in approach, is going to peter out. And the results show over and over for the last 20 years, there's been 3 different studies show that 70% of change efforts fail to achieve their desired results. And we think it's because you're not working at the individual and at the team and at the organizational level. So if you start at the top, great, but make sure you go all the way to the individual. Or if you start at the individual, that's fine too, but you've got to make sure you're aligning the organization to enable and engage individuals along the way.
Okay. So Kendall, where do we begin if we're an organization that acknowledges that we need change, and which comes first? You're giving us the permission to start at the top or the bottom. which is what? Give me a first step.
You know, Eric, I'd start with the leadership team. I have seen too many leaders that go out and say, we want you to change, but they don't walk the talk. They're not starting themselves. And so what we've started to do in the last few years is when a team comes to us and says, we feel we need to change, the very first step is we look at leadership.
Now, what are you willing to do?
What are you willing to do individually first as a leader? And then what are you willing to do with your leadership team? Really what we're looking at is not only the quality, but the capacity of a leadership team to receive change themselves and then lead it. Because if they're not going to lead it, you know, everything else you do in change is just going to be interesting. You're going to have great PowerPoints. You're going to have some good banners, but people are going to look to see if the leader first is willing to change. So that's where we're starting today.
It's a good place to start because they know we do. We look to see, did they just come back from a rally or, you know, great convention? Did they read a great book and they're all fired up? But next week, you know, they'll get over it and they'll go back to the way things were. And I think so often that's what happens a lot of times with leaders. We read a great book or we hear a great speaker and we get all motivated and we come in and we think we're going to motivate and rally the team. But, you know, a week or 2 or 3 weeks goes by and we're kind of back to the same place we were. How do we keep it and make it sustainable?
You know, Angel, it's a great question because what I don't see on leadership priorities or what I might call the leadership agenda, I don't see that change is a priority on their agenda. I see results, I see customer service initiatives, I see improving a process, maybe implementing Six Sigma, those kind of things. But when I talk to them about change, it's almost like they want to delegate that to a human resource department or to the director of operations or a different department. And so when they read a book, they say, yeah, I want this, but they haven't thought through what does it mean? What do I do as a leader? How do I get people focused? How do I align everybody to this change? How do I engage their hearts, hands, and minds? How do I improve our own leadership? And ultimately, how do I sustain it so that it doesn't just become a flavor of the month per se, or a book of the month, but instead it's on my leadership agenda. And every day I'm thinking, what's the role that I'm playing to enable this change?
Kendall, is there any point in time where change doesn't need, I mean, do we arrive? Do we get there and we don't need change anymore? Or do we kind of keep our fingers and maybe our eyes on the pulse and the horizon, looking for, because I think I just answered my own question. What do you think?
I agree with you. General Shinseki said, if you don't like change, you know, you just better prepare for the future because that is the future.
Right.
And you've got to start getting good at it because what we're seeing over and over, we've all read the statistics of how fast change is happening. And if it's not in your industry, it will be soon. Customers are screaming for it. Board of directors are screaming for it. And too often, even in our own professions, it's not that we become lazy, but we get comfortable. And then when our bread basket has changed or moved, we're not quite ready. And so that's why I think it's got to be a skill set now that we've got to get as good at it as managing the balance sheet, as managing customer relations.
Right.
Because it's inevitable. Our industry is going to change, if not this month, probably next month.
I like it. Kendall Lyman, he's the author of the book, Change the Way You Change, 5 Roles of Leaders Who Accelerate Business Performance. And Kendall, I feel like we just tipped the iceberg having you on today. So we're going to have you back. This is an ongoing conversation that has to happen. And we're not just changing for the sake of change. We're actually changing the shape of our future and keeping up with the changes in the marketplace. Kendall, a final word of thought, word of wisdom, and then how you want our listeners to stay connected with you.
Yes, thank you. I think the thing that I've learned the most in working with leaders is those that are doing it well are reflective first. It's almost like they're looking in the mirror first. And once they look in the mirror and start to change, then they can turn that mirror more into a window and people will follow. People will engage. and it'll become a partnership. So it's not just the leader not knowing what to do. Instead, it becomes the whole team, the whole organization figuring out together. And you can find what we're working on, some of the blogs that we're posting at www.changethewayouchange.
I love it. ChangeTheWayYouChange.com. Kendall Lyman. And here's the title of your next book. Start with the mirror before looking through the window.
Excellent.
It's just beautiful. Kendall,
we're going to have to co-author together.
Oh, don't tease me now.
I love
I'm good for titles, brother. Kendall, thanks for joining us, man. We really appreciate you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for all you do for listeners.
Absolutely. Kendall Lyman, again, the book, Change the Way You Change, 5 Roles of Leaders Who Accelerate Business Performance. Go check out ChangeTheWayYouChange.com and pick up a copy for yourself and a leader that you value. That will go a long way. All right. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we've got more positive business talk because that's the way we roll around here. If you're watching by way of Facebook Live, would you do us a favor? Would you click the share button and let everybody know that there's something special happening here on the Experience Pros Facebook page as well? We'll be back right after these messages.
America's home for positive business talk. You're listening to the Experience Pros Radio.